Now, a growing trend in India are these small downsized turbo petrol cars, and today we have another one on test, and it is the new Grand i10 Nios Turbo with the familiar 1-litre Turbo GDI engine. Now, Hyundai claims that every car they plonk this engine into turns it into being sporty. But let's put it on the road and find out if it's true. But before we begin, do remember to like, share and subscribe and leave a comment down below to let us know what you think of the Nios Turbo.
The Nios has been on sale for some time, but we first saw it as the Nios Turbo in the flesh at the 2020 Auto Expo. While it gets some minor styling tweaks on the outside and inside, which we shall get to in a bit, the major change is under the bonnet.
The Nios Turbo gets the same 1-litre TGDI engine as we have seen before in the Venue and the Verna. However, in the Nios it's a little bit down on power compared to the 118 in the Venue and the Verna. Here we're only getting about 99 horsepower. However, the torque output at 171 Newton meters of torque is identical. Now, thanks to the copious amount of torque available, there's always grunt when you need it from the engine, and it's always eager to push, so that makes it quite a lot fun to drive.
There is some noticeable turbo lag initially till about 1500 to 1700 RPM. But then, when the turbo spools up, it lunges forward and the revs begin to climb up all the way to the 6500 RPM red line. But over the 5500 RPM mark, it does begin to run out of breath, but that's understandable. The refinement of the engine is phenomenal. Unless you're really pushing the motor to its red line, you don't really hear the engine in the cabin while driving.
Now, Hyundai is claiming that the Nios Turbo can deliver up to about 20 kilometers per litre combined in fuel economy. We haven't had the chance to test it out properly, but being this fun to push, I think it's going to be difficult for someone to restrain themselves and get 20 kmpl out of this car. Usually this engine is offered with a 7-speed DCT or the IMT in the case of the Venue or the Verna. However, in the Nios it comes with a 5-speed manual gearbox only. And that is the ideal recipe for the enthusiast, right?
Changing gears is actually very precise and smooth. But while the clutch pedal travel is decent, it is on the heavier side, meaning that your left knee will be hard at work during stop-and-go traffic. Additionally, I feel the brake pedal could have offered more feedback as it feels quite spongy, but stopping power as a whole is ample. The immediate comparison people will make with the Nios Turbo is how it stacks up against the Swift.
When I first drove the Nios, it didn't feel as fun and engaging to drive compared to its rival, the Maruti Suzuki Swift. The Swift, with its petrol engine, is a lot more eager and more linear in response, and the gearing in the petrol is just sublime. This Nios Turbo, on the other hand, that gap to the Swift seems to have been narrowed down by some significant margin. The suspension setup is firm but supple. It's not uncomfortable by any means, and it is still forgiving. This has helped it be extremely stable through the corners and at high speeds. With the Nios Turbo, the ride is actually quite pliant because the suspension is a little bit firm but supple, and it's not uncomfortable by any means. The steering is a little bit on the heavier side as well. There is also decent feedback at lower speeds. However, at high speeds, although the weight is still there, it's still a little slow to respond to your inputs, which means at high speeds you're still guessing how much input you need to put in to change lanes or just overtake. So that can be an issue for some. Despite the weight, I keep begging for the steering to talk back to me and tell me which way the wheels are pointing.
While internationally, this version of the Nios is sold as the i10 N line. For the Indian market, the same 1-litre turbo motor powered car is what is being offered as the Nios Turbo, which is available in two options of dual tone paint schemes, with this one finished in red with the black roof. Additionally, the front grille has been finished in gloss black and with a couple of turbo badges thrown in for good measure. Quite frankly, its looks are not subtle. The Nios Turbo means business. Other than these touches, the styling remains unchanged to the regular Nios, and being based on the sports variant, the interior and the features list is also quite similar. In the cabin, the Nios Turbo uses the exact layout and dimensions as the regular model, which is great because even with an all-black theme and the subtle red touches, the spacious cabin doesn't feel cramped in any way, and the rear seats also offer ample amount of space and comfort. The features list includes the tried and tested 8-inch touchscreen infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, the semi-digital instrument cluster, a wireless smartphone charger, auto climate control with rear AC vents, along with everything else you would find with the sports variant of the Nios, including the whole suite of safety features as standard.
Now, the Nios Turbo is a nice car to drive around pretty much every day. There aren't many issues which are deal breakers with the car because of the turbocharging, thus resulting in more power output from these engines. Automakers are pushing these cars as sporty variants. Now, after driving it, by no means do I feel like the Nios Turbo belongs on the racetrack, and no one's asking it to be either. I'm glad to report that I can wholeheartedly say that the Nios Turbo is not gimmicky, and it does have real substance that can excite the enthusiast.